Hey guys, it's Brian, and this is XS MotorWorks, and welcome back to my shop. So hey, this is episode number 3 of Project Mini Split Decision. So Split Decision itself is this car you see in front of you. If you're not familiar with this, you're new to my channel, I encourage you to go back and look at the old episodes, and you get all caught up as to what this thing is in front of us. This is obviously not completely done yet, and the final renderings are being worked on. Design issues are being kind of sorted out with M3D, and I keep those updated images on my Instagram account, which I will link in the description if you're actually interested. So anyway, let's just kind of jump back into Mini SD, or the 2/3 scale model of this, because we are going to be starting to make body molds soon. The 1 scale, then the 2 scale for that car, and then finally the actual molds for the full production size. When we left off in the last episode, I had installed my lovely chain gear selector in the car, and I was going to work on the suspension. Well, I did work on the suspension. Unfortunately, I made a big boo-boo, and basically the Chinese go-kart was just going to not be the right proportions to make a 2/3 scale model of this car. So let's jump over there and kind of see what I'm talking about. To save a little bit of face about using that cheap Chinese go-kart, which I know is said was a bad idea, I needed to make some modifications to the chassis. When I mean some modifications to the chassis, I mean a lot of modifications to the chassis. So originally it was a 2-seater, now it's a 1-seater. Well, you know what? Instead of describing all the things I've done, why don't we just go ahead and jump over there and take a look at it. Here you have it, Mini SD. So it's not quite done yet, obviously. Actually, the only thing that is done is the front suspension. The rear suspension is what I'll be working on in the next episode, as well as a differential. So this car will have a true differential in it. I've kind of stole that from another car. So you might ask yourself, well, what's left of that cheap Chinese go-kart you referred to just a second ago? Well, these 2 frame rails are still from that go-kart, so everything else has been replaced. This is a new cradle in the back, new cradle in the front, and speaking of the front, why don't we go over and kind of look at that detail here, what I've kind of come up with. I'm still using a lot of cheap parts for this thing. It's a go-kart parts, but I've kind of modified them a little bit. So let's jump in the front and kind of take a zoom in on that. As you can see, the front suspension is installed. So I bought this cheap Chinese go-kart kit off of Alibaba. It came with the A-arms, came with the rack and pinion steering, and these, I called them coilovers, but they're actually, I don't think there's any dampening in these things whatsoever. So these will probably have to be replaced. The spring works, but that's about it. It may look like, or maybe not, that this has been placed randomly. I actually did as much calculation as I possibly could on the suspension geometry given the knuckle and the A-arm length as well as the width of the car. I did that using the website vsusp.com. Actually, why don't we jump over to that website and I'll actually go ahead and run through these calculations real quick so you can see where I got these points from to make sure that I got the best handling characteristics possible for this car. All right, so here's the website I was referring to, this VSUSP. By default, this is the suspension they actually show you, and you can see as you go through a corner how well that center of gravity right there stays in the middle and very low to the ground. And these are the values they've got. Unfortunately, I am not quite so lucky. So if we look at mine, I have to go in here and plug in the tires, the steering, the knuckles, and the A-arms, and the frame itself. So knowing that the cart has to be 94 1/4 inches wide to match the 2/3 scale, that meant that and I wanted a 4-inch road clearance. These 2 factors were pretty much already set. There's not a lot I could do with that. So that meant that these next 3 are the values I could play with to achieve the best possible handling characteristics. As you can see, as I go through a corner, I was able to achieve a flat center of gravity pretty much. It's just a lot higher than I'd like it to be. But overall, it's really pretty good. So we know now that basically the lower A-arm needs to be mounted at the 4 plus the 4 inches, so an 8.5 total. The upper A-arm needs to be mounted at 8 inches from the plus the 4 inches, so 12 total. And that's going to basically achieve, what I can best hope to accomplish given all these other things that are kind of limitations. I could obviously recreate the A-arms and knuckles and stuff like that, but I'm really just trying to get this project done so I can focus on the main project. So anyway, hopefully that helps you kind of understand how I went about creating the suspension geometry. So from the website, we actually knew where to mount the upper and lower A-arms. The last thing I needed to do prior to getting this thing all welded up was set the camber and caster. Realistically, I needed to set the caster because this is actually welded onto here, and once it's welded on, there's no changing the caster. So I went with a 6-degree caster on this thing with the 1-degree camber. I can still adjust the camber slightly if I need to, probably actually more than slightly. It's got quite a thread on that. So, but that should be good enough to get this cart going a lot better than what it was originally designed to do. Got my friend here, Rashad, stopping by the shop, and as you may know, this cart really was just supposed to be a 2/3 scale to put the body on to kind of see the mock-up, and then I decided to challenge him to a bit of a race. If you're not familiar with that, he's got a 100% electric go-kart that's on his channel, and I'll link to the description below. And I kind of told him that I was going to, bring something a little heavier. So this is his first time he's seen the go-kart since I've actually cut it up and done some major modifications. So Rashad, what do you think?
Guys, Brian is officially a madman. This was never supposed to go this far, but as you can see, he has went all out and completely redesigned the entire go-kart chassis, and I'm officially nervous. However, I'm not afraid. I still have my plan, and we're sticking to it, guys. So on my channel, I'm going to be definitely getting to work very quickly to try to match what Brian has done with this monster.
So, yes, so Rashad does have his cart actually running, which this one isn't doing just yet. But I do think, Rashad, I think I've got you kind of, maybe on the back heels just a little bit.
Yeah.
I think you're going to have to, like,
guys, he's come with his 1-2 punch.
Make it a little quicker.
Yeah, for sure, guys.
So anyway, I think that's a good stopping point for this video. In the next video, I'll be working on the rear end, specifically the differential. And I'll talk about where I got this little differential from. Very nice, very small. You can grab these really cheap. As well as the LSD, limited slip differential, that needs to go inside this thing here to make sure that we can get as much traction and turning ability, because we actually haven't decided on what kind of course we're racing. We don't know if we're doing drifting, off-road, drag. I think we're going to do all the above,
I think all of the above.
All the above. All right. So anyway, if you like that kind of stuff, consider subscribing. And as always, thanks for watching.
See you later.